Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits. The rebels. The troublemakers. The round pegs in the square holes. The ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Well, hello, friends. Mark Mandel here, the host of CX Changemakers. Thanks for hanging out with me here. It's been a while since we've been together. I feel a little out of practice and a little rusty here, so I hope that's okay with you as we go through this together on this fun journey for the next hour. For those of you who don't know this show, CX Changemakers, first I want to just welcome you. I want to say thank you really from my heart in joining me today. If you don't know what CX Changemakers is about, I'm going to take a moment to reintroduce the show to you because it's been a little while since we've done one. You know, where I sit in business, whether it be in the CX space or otherwise, I naturally gravitate to and love companies that are not afraid to stand for something and are not afraid to be different than the pack or different than the herd. You know, in the CX world, especially the CX tech world, I can't tell you how many companies I can count, 50, 40, 60, who said, you know, we're going to start a new business and our whole idea is we're going to go copy Qualtrics and just be a little cheaper. Or we're going to copy Medallia and be a little cheaper. And that's not interesting. I have the utmost respect for companies and people who lead them who say, you know what, whatever's been out there now got us to this far in our industry, but they're not going to get us further. And what we need the ability to do, like the Apple ad said, which I love, by the way, is to think differently, to be willing to challenge thinking, to be willing to say, you know what, we're going to do it differently. We're going to do it our way. And our way is better, even though it's not done by 50 other companies right now. And so one of the things I love about this show is I love to take leaders from different companies, whether it be people on the vendor side who are out there paving new roads as springing up new startups and new companies, or even people inside corporate roles who are more intrapreneurial in their work, where they're out there paving new roads inside their own organizations. We bring them together on this show and we talk about new ideas in CX. We talk about new ideas in business. We talk about new ideas in relationship management. We talk about new ideas in tech and in strategy. But the common denominator about the CX Changemakers show, we really want to bring together people whose mindsets are, or who are wired in a way that says, I want to take what's out there now in the popular vote and set it aside and be willing to be able to come in and say, you know what, whatever got us this far is great, but I'm doing something new. I'm doing something different. I got a new idea and I'm going to make that new idea work, and they manifest it to work. That's exactly the type of work we're going to do for the next 50 or 55 minutes while we're together. I'm going to have a couple of guests on this show with me today that are exactly that, exactly these kind of people. And I'm excited to invite you to join us in a cool conversation in just a moment. But before we get into the conversation, I would just take a second to do a little bit of housekeeping, because again, it's been a little while. Since many of the folks who are listening to this, whether it be on YouTube or on LinkedIn Live, you know, you may be sitting out there listening to this show right now and thinking, you know, is there a way that I could send you something to help you advance in your own CX knowledge, your own CX careers? So I'm holding up this book called CX Pro Beyond the Basics by Carl Charisse. Carl is a good friend of mine, and I promised Carl that I would buy some books from him and I would share them with you guys. And so all I ask is that if you want a copy of Carl's book, totally free, totally as our gift, just all you need to do is put a little message in the chat, in the comments, that you want a copy of Carl's book, and I will personally make sure that you get a copy of Carl's book. But let's get to the heart of this show and why we really wanted to get together with you today. You know, I've been around the CX space for a long time. Gosh, I'm going to dare say coming up on almost 30 years of this type of work now. And I could tell you that the idea of customer journey mapping is not a new idea. Certainly, you know, we've mapped journeys, we've blueprinted them, we've understood them, we've documented them. That's not new. The problem is, if I look back on the last number of God knows how many years of mapping journeys, most of those mapping exercises that I've either heard of or been part of have not produced results. They've, generally speaking, have become beautiful pictures of customer relationships that don't drive impact to the business. Now, let's just be very, very clear, just amongst us here, just among friends. We're sitting here doing this show live in May of 2026. So if you're watching this as a playback a year from now, we're talking in the context of May 2026. If as CX leaders, CX practitioners, CX thought leaders, if we're not able to link any of our work, whether it be our journey understanding, whether it be our VOC work, whether it be our transformational efforts, if we can't take this work and not just link it to action, but link it to outcomes, and then link those outcomes to financial impact to the business, I dare say we're going to be in some dire straits. We may not get our budgets next year or even this year. We may not have the support from leadership. We may not even have our jobs. And I could tell you that there's no bigger topic in my mind sitting here, right now, than to have an opportunity to begin to think through new ways to think about customer experience through the lens of action. Think about it for a minute. We'll bring my guests on in just a second, but when you think about what's been happening looking back in just the last couple of weeks in our industry, you know, there have been some really notable, I'm going to dare call them failures out there. Look at the monstrous problem right now that our friends at Medallia have publicly stated that they're having. Medallia is going to get broken up, sold off for parts, and for all intents and purposes shut down. Why? Because they were too caught up in the old thinking of this is a measurement-centered problem. They were too busy making the next survey program. They were too busy figuring out the next dashboard. They were too busy figuring out the next metric or KPI or whatever you want to call it. And they were not focusing enough, in my opinion at least, in their shift into more modern action orientation. And because they didn't make that shift clearly enough, fast enough, the industry sort of moved on and they didn't move on with them. So for purposes of this conversation, just with us here today, I want to really frame what's going to come at you for the next 50 or so minutes about action orientation and outcomes orientation, and to reframe understanding our customer relationships from measurement and documentation, i.e. a map, into something that has much greater strength, much greater applicability, and much, much more value. So we want to raise the stakes in this context of understanding and moving forward in these customer journeys from mapping a journey, which we'll talk a fair bit about in this conversation coming up, to managing this journey coming up. So moving from journey mapping to journey management. And then we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to talk about experience orchestration, which is going to be a new term for a lot of us. And we'll talk more about what is experience orchestration in just a couple of minutes. So with that game plan in mind, let me describe what's coming here now in terms of my friends who are going to join us on this conversation. We're lucky today that we have two guys who are going to join me in this call. I thought this was going to be one guy. I reached out to another guy who I admire and like immensely, and I said, hey, would you join this conversation? And he said he would be happy to. So it's going to have two guys are going to join me today. And they're both really interesting and come from very different parts of our industry. I'm going to tell you first about the first gentleman who's going to join. His name is Eytan Hattem, and Eytan runs a company called Cemantica. I don't know if you know Cemantica at all, but if you don't, at the end of this hour, you will. Cemantica has been in business for a little while now, focusing on helping CX leaders think differently about customer relationships and, more to the point, customer journeys. They pioneered a space, and they've been well regarded in the space around journey management. Up until this point, you'll see if you look at them on the Forrester Wave report, they're up there on the right corner of the Forrester Wave for journey management work. But they're going to be here today to kind of extend that story even farther. They're going to talk about experience orchestration and what does that mean. So Eytan's going to join in a second. And then in addition to Eytan, we're going to bring on a gentleman named Jason Goodin. Jason works for a company called Everwise Credit Union in the Midwest. Jason is the head of CX strategy over there, and he's just an awesome guy. And between Eytan, Jason, and I, we're going to sit and hopefully just riff for the next 45 or 50 minutes about what's really going on in CX, what's really going on in journeys, what's really going on in experience design, what's really going on in experience orchestration, and how do we link that back to outcomes, and how do we link those outcomes back to money. So without further fanfare, I'd like to bring Eytan onto the call first. Hey, my friend, welcome to be here.
Hello. Hi, Mark. Great to be here.
Thank you for hanging out. You know, Eytan, it dawns on me that we have some friends who might be listening to this conversation who are now become more familiar or get reminded about who I am. Can you do me a favor and take 3 minutes and just talk about you? I want to hear about your story. I want to hear about kind of, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, what mission you're on, and help us understand where you fit into the CX ecosystem and understand kind of that journey a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me, Mark. I'm happy to tell my story. So I started my career in CRM, most of my career in CRM, implementing customer engagement solution for international customers around the world. And then one of the things I figured out during my implementations is that I was always surprised we are only asking the user what they want to have in the system, but we're never asking the customer. So we ended up designing systems that fit the user but don't serve the customer.
Sure.
And this is where I decided I want to move to the other side of the road. And I became a customer experience consultant. I did my CCXP certification and joined the CXP organization. And I started doing it from the outside in instead of the inside out. And I figured out that this is a good way to implement actually software, is to look at it from customer lens and then design the system in that way, instead of trying to design it yourself and then test if it's fitting the customers or not. So I created Cemantica 6.5 years ago. That was the beginning of my entrepreneur path. I created it from day one as a journey management platform. So it was never a journey mapping tool. It was always a journey management. Before journey management was known, or
Sure.
People knew what it is. It was at the beginning of this term. I was feeling that there's a bigger story that we need to cover, and that I was also, during my consulting missions, I was facing this problem that most journey mapping missions ended up as a one-off exercise, as something you do once, but there are no outcomes and there is no action that follows the journey mapping process.
Yeah.
So either than getting the benefits of sharing experiences, you wouldn't get any results impacting customers. And if you don't impact customers, you actually done nothing, because that's the only thing that counts. If change is happening on customer side, you did something. If you didn't change anything, then you just got stuck in a service design loop, I call it, where you have beautiful maps but no action.
I was going to say pretty pictures.
Pretty pictures. There are lots of words for that. I don't underestimate the pretty picture. I do think there is value in sharing experiences, but it's not enough today. Definitely not in the age of AI. You have to see the action happening on customer side, and you have to be quick. If this is a long process and after a year you have conclusions, that's too late. Everything has already changed, both on the operating model and in the customer journey. this is a glance about me, a little bit what Cemantica does. I guess I will tell a bit more about that later.
We're going to talk a lot about why we think some of the initiatives in journey mapping have failed over the years. We'll talk more about, moving into mindset from mapping journeys to really managing them to truly now optimizing and acting on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what we really want to cover is that, but you talked about how fast people need to move. And, I always tell the same story. And for some of you guys who might be listening in, you may have heard me talk about this story in previous shows, but it bears repeating here because it can't be more clear. I'm not going to name names because I'm going to be a little mean about the company that, exhibited this behavior. But one of the forefront technology companies in the United States used to be a client of mine a few years ago. And I remember visiting their headquarters building one time for a typical scheduled visit. And the head of CX globally excitedly brought me into a new part of the building, this long corridor, long hallway, where they had actually taken the time to paint what he called his journey map on the wall of the building. And I said to him, "What's that?" And he said, "It's the journey map. Isn't it cool?" And I said, by the time the paint on the wall dried, it's probably wrong and out of date. And I said, "You're showing something that you may have painted 4 months ago that no longer matters." And he was all disappointed. He thought he was doing something amazing. But it reflects the same thinking when these companies, they bring in these consultants to run journey mapping workshops. And the end of the workshop becomes the map. And they take this map and they frame it and they put it up on their wall and they go, "That's it. We're done. We made the map." And nothing happens. They could show people the picture, they could talk about the picture, but they don't know where they need to focus their efforts to change. And I think at the end of the day, none of this matters if it's not about making it better for the customer. Would that be fair?
Fair enough.
So I like to take a minute and divert our conversation now to bring in our friend Jason. Let's do that here. There he is. Hey. So Jason, you may have heard us talking here over the last couple of minutes. There's so much misunderstanding about what all this stuff is about. And I'm not just talking about beginner companies and beginner CX people. I'm talking about people who've been in this profession for years, still are so focused on potentially the wrong things. And I'm hoping that the three of us might have an interesting conversation about that. But before we do, Jason, could I kind of put the ball in your court to introduce yourself to our listeners here and a little bit about Everwise?
Yeah, so sure. I am the Director of Member Experience at Everwise Credit Union, formerly known as Teachers Credit Union. I've been there about 2 years, the first experienced professional at the organization. Prior to me joining Everwise, they were Teachers Credit Union and had gone through a rebranding. So I started my career as a bank teller just to pay my way through college. And what really kind of locked me into this space of customer experience goes that far back. I distinctly remember helping a customer named Helen, who, when I went to a University of Michigan football game, by the way, go MSU, go green, where I got my customer experience master's from. She watched the entire game, and she was an elderly customer, just to see if she could see me on TV, because I had made some impact and connection in her life. But Helen wasn't the only one. I distinctly remember also helping another client, Brian, get multiple auto loans. He had a lot of kids and a growing family, but looked at things and how might we be able to restructure this to get you into what you need for your family and get you out of debt sooner overall. So I was looking at things broader, more holistically, with this thought of how can we make an impact in people's lives? And when I left branch banking and went into back office roles, HR, operations, business analysis, and eventually a CX team and so forth, all along the way, I had this kind of systems level view that every decision we make has an impact on the person at the very end of the business, the organization. So everything should start there, and not just, at that level of what are we building and designing for, but who are we impacting and how are we doing that? And that's kind of the meaning that I bring into the work that I do, and what I'm hopefully working in collaboration with this broad team at Everwise to build over time.
Cool. Fantastic. Eytan, you mentioned when you were telling us about your origin story, how Cemantica was born as a journey management platform. It dawns on me that people listening may not know the difference, the nuance between journey management and journey mapping. From your perspective, I'd love to hear what you think the advantages are, the differences are between the two, just to clarify for people to understand really where your focus has been for the last 6 years.
Yeah, sure. I would say that journey mapping is part of the process of journey management. It's not something, different. It's just part of it. If the journey mapping is very focused on designing the journey, designing the experience in the journey management is talking about how do you bring this to action? How do you run in a continuous improvement cycle and not as a one-off exercise? When you do journey mapping, you're sharing experiences. People will come together in order to build the journey map. They will share experiences. They will identify pain points, and they will maybe identify some areas of opportunities.
Sure.
But once the journey mapping session is over, everyone goes back to their daily job.
Exactly.
And then the map gets forgotten, it's getting outdated, and nothing happens. Journey management is the practice of continuously improving the journey. Well, it includes aspects like governance, creating, for example, journey committees, having a governance structure around that will monitor the progress of improving the journey. It's about taking the action out of the opportunities, prioritizing them, transforming them to solutions, prioritizing them, executing projects, and then measuring the impact that the CX initiatives had on business performance and on the improvement of customer experience. And that's the main difference. Then it extends more to experience orchestration, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But these are the main fundamental changes between the two.
I can't, from my opinion, I can't tell you how many times, people have done, like you said, the mapping part over the years. And, people don't even know where the map went. People say, who has the journey map? Well, maybe it's on John's laptop in some PDF that we have somewhere in a folder, right? They don't use it for anything other than creating what I keep calling an artifact of some bit of work, or kind of a souvenir of the work done, which I think is completely backward. From where I sit, the journey understanding is the beginning of the process, and becomes sort of the feeder information to working on improving it over time, and as you said, iterating on it over time.
Mm-hmm.
And not just that once and done. Okay, we got the map, check. It's like the guy who runs a survey to his customers, and he runs the survey very dutifully. He sends out thousands of survey invitations. He gets thousands back in. He has amazing dashboards that nobody pays attention to, right? And they just kind of come and go. And he thinks he's going to be making things better for his customer by asking them a bunch of questions about how much they love him. And unless you think about transformation and action, in my opinion, at least, you're not going to move the needle forward. You're not going to get anything done. And that's just a gigantically missed opportunity, at least the way I see it. Mm-hmm. Jason, what's your take on that?
Yeah, by and large, I agree there. I mean, at the beginning of it here, a journey is fundamentally a set of process steps that we're documenting and ensuring that we optimize so that they work for both the customer and the business at the end of the day. But as we all know, business continues to change. It continues to transform, evolve, and grow with the economy, technology, you name it. We all know this. That's basics. So unless there's a plan at the beginning of that journey to ensure that someone has ownership of it and governance of that, with the responsibilities to revisit as changes happen in the business, then it's nothing more than wallpaper.
Yep.
Essentially. So for me, that is kind of an absolute key. And the fact is here is, I'm a practitioner who goes and leads those workshops, but the reality also in that is in so many companies and so many spaces, folks like me don't have either the time, the capacity, or the connection to those decision-making outcomes at the end of it. But we very well should be folks that understand what levers need to be pulled within the organization to make those changes, and then ensure that we're bringing the right folks in the room to actually execute on those and stay close enough through the process while maintaining that kind of dotted line connection to, as the system fundamentally changes, even in slight ways, that we're going back to the table and helping provide that customer member context within the context of those changes that are being made, so that that map stays up to date, and so that we're actually carrying out the changes that we committed ourselves to. So that's, it's change management, it's project management, it's the operational side, but that lens is key. Otherwise, what's the point of the exercise?
Well, let me drill in on that for a minute with both of you guys, and I want to hear what you guys both think, if I can. We talk a lot about mapping. We talk about the idea of generating some amount of customer understanding and customer insight. But there seems to always be this huge gap between, okay, I have insight. How do I motivate, or how do I enable action? And I think if we can't jump that gap, we have a major problem. What do you guys think about, just the insight to action gap, let alone going further? Would love to hear either Jason from in perspective of an inside guy like you, or Eytan from your perspective as an expert in the industry, one way or the other. What have you seen? What have you heard, whether it be in your own companies or people you've seen on the outside, that where that gap has existed, and how do people jump the gap? What do they need to get it better?
I can give my take on it, and I think there are two parts, to the answer, because the insights to action, I would say, is composed of two things that need to happen. First of all, you need to have quality insights. When we say insights, what does it mean?
Different
insights
things,
can be everything, right?
Yep.
Insights have a life cycle. They start with raw data that then until they get an insight, there's things happening in the way that will turn them into a quality insight.
Mm-hmm.
The quality of the insights impact the quality of the decision making. If you're making decisions based on wrong insights or insights that are not qualified, you might be taking the wrong decision. So I think the first element is, first of all, to get to quality insights, and which will drive quality decision making. So there is the decision making. This is one process of the insights to action. And then it is taking the decision to action.
Yeah.
So that's one part. The second part, taking it to action, is the difficult part, because this is where you will face the political problems, budget restrictions, resources problems, skills, all kinds of things that you are missing that are preventing you from implementing or executing and making change happen. And this has happened very frequently because, for example, if you look at the role of Jason, okay, Jason has a role. Jason is not the HR manager. He's not the CFO. He isn't the maybe digital manager. He's not the customer success manager of the company. But many of the changes that Jason needs to execute with regards to improving the experience that has been identified in the customer journey map are related to other departments in the organization. How do you go to talk to them and tell, hey, you need to change the learning plans because we're lacking skill in the front line, the call center? That's not your responsibility. Like, why are you coming and, interfering in my role?
Yep.
This is where the political problems are surfacing. Customer experience, when it's a department on its own, has the risk of becoming a silo on its own. And then it's very hard to communicate and collaborate with the other departments. So I think that the second part of it, of making it happen, requires also management attention, requires being empowered to take decision and drive change in the company, because it's all about change, making change happen. So these are the two keys that I see: quality of insights and decision making, and then the empowerment to make change happen in an organization.
Interesting. You know, from where I sit, I remember a conversation I had with an old friend. He said, I thought CX, in his opinion, was a computer science problem. He said it turns out to be a political science problem. Right? Where it really is about often these CX teams and leaders they don't own the interaction channels. They don't own many of these other things that are being considered. So they become kind of the bad guy who comes around and says, hey, your stuff is no good. We got to change you. My stuff's good. Your stuff's not so good.
Well, and I wonder sometimes, and sorry for interrupting there, but I wonder sometimes how much folks in CX roles take the time to step back and understand their partners within the business. And I don't mean, when I say that, how the business operates. What I really mean at a more deep and fundamental level is what constitutes success for those partners that you're supposed to be working with as individuals, just as much as your own goals constitute success for you as a CX practitioner. It's absolutely key. What are you working on this year? What defines a successful year for you? What defines a successful 3 to 5 years for you? So then I can come alongside and help make that happen and build the relationship capital that is necessary to make deeper changes within the business. Sure. And I'm going to push back on one thing also. It's just a little side. Sure. This word insights we use all the time. I think we overuse it, actually. And I think what we've done maybe in the CX world is we think everything is an insight. And the reality is, and here's what I mean. You could be looking at have somebody cut their customer surveys, their social feedback, and go, my gosh, people don't like our brand colors. Is that an insight? Are you changing your brand colors based on that? Or, if it's low level noise, as opposed to what is actually causing people to leave the organization? What is process wise and operationally? That's the insight that we need to focus in on more. And I think sometimes in the CX seat, we get caught up on everything instead of what's meaningful at the individual level and at the revenue level.
Sure. I used to have a friend that said an insight was just an answer to a question. Right? Data is just the raw material for that. Right? But I tend to think that it could be. But I hear what you're saying, and it makes complete sense. If we can't correlate a finding, which is still an answer to a question or an insight, to the outcome that we think the outcome we're looking for, we're misplacing our efforts, in my opinion. And there's too much distraction, too much noise, and not enough focus on where people need to take this work. And it has to, and again, different companies and different teams will have different priorities for sure. Some of them just say, I want the lowest effort, highest payoff, and that'll be what I want to do. Other people will say, we really know that we have a gap in this segment in our customers, and we want to overserve these people. Naturally, we think we get the best return on investment or best return on effort, and whatever the decision-making criteria are. But I think that from where I sit, people don't have that kind of roadmap thinking about what they're doing with research and insight and CX technology and CX efforts and focus and transformation. It's like they're going to just say, let's go for a meandering walk and see what we see. And then we see something that looks really good, we'll attach ourselves. We'll do that now because it looks really good, as opposed to something with much more focus. I think there's a lot of inherent danger there. I think a lot about this. And I remember the first time, Eytan, I heard, probably 4 or 5 years ago, the first time I heard the term journey management. And in that context, the way it came up was the idea that journey maps are typically static. And when you want to manage the journey, you need to infuse the map with opportunity to change and adapt as the situation changes and adapts. And the way they talked about that back then, 4 or 5 years ago, was, hey, if we can figure out a way to take our map with our stages of the journey across the top very typically, and our channels and touch points down the side typically, but start to infuse the map with data, put information, put our VOC in, put our other insight generating techniques into the map, we could start to see the evolution. Because, so many people, I remember these conversations, they try to fake this, right? They'll take like a survey tool, fill in the blank, survey tool dashboard. Let's just pick Qualtrics because it comes to mind. They take a Qualtrics dashboard and they'll say, okay, let's put in their opinion, the 5, 6, 3, 7 stages of a journey across the top. And then they'll put NPS for each stage. And they'll say, okay, when we're at stage 1, we're a 56. When we're at stage 2, we go up to a 62. Then we come down to a 51 or whatever. And they show up and down fluctuation. Except that, in my opinion, real customers don't follow stages. They come in step 1, they jump to step 4, they change touch points and channels, they come back, they revert. They're all over the place. And you can't say, boy, as the journey progresses, things are improving when you don't have live information and have that information truly mapped to the experience and not just the desired outcome.
Yes.
You can't always say step 1 to step 5, that's our experience. It doesn't work like that. What are you thinking about that, guys? Is there a way that you guys have seen or that you could imagine where we can effectively take live data and start to blend it with an understanding of this journey sequencing and understand what's happening when?
Yes, first of all, we call this, data-driven journeys or data-infused maps.
Sure.
The fact is that journeys are not linear. You're right about that. Journeys are not linear. They're not behaving like a sequence always. No. It depends who goes into the funnel. Some will sequence, some will not, some will jump. And it's all like lots of small forks of decision-making that drives you here, drives you left, drives you right. It depends on the persona, depends on the journey, depends on the time they went through the journey, the touch point they were using. So many parameters could influence the way that they will be going through. What I've seen useful is that when we're saying to plug data into the journey, there are 2, let's say, major data sets, so types of data sets that I would plug in. First of all, there is the experience data, structured and unstructured, not just the structured one, NPS score. It's also what did people say about that, which is where the new technology that we bought with Luminoso is doing such a job, analyzing unstructured data and providing you this context of what is exactly the customer talking about, and how can we plug it into a journey context? Where is it in the journey? The second set of data is operational data, things related to the business KPIs that are related to the customer journey. These performance indicators are what I call the voice of the process. You are not only getting feedback data from customers answering surveys. The other maybe untouched data, this is the gold that is very hard. So many organizations are not able to break through this one, is to conclude from the operational data, what do customers think and feel about you without asking them. And it's clear that you can have this data from customer service interaction, from sales interactions, from website browsing. There are lots of sources of data that can help you conclude things about customer experience, regardless of the sequence of the journey, on a touch point level, on a persona level, on a stage level. And all the aggregation of this information is supposed to give you a picture that will help you identify the pain points in this customer journey, and then ideate the opportunities and the solutions that will help you solve the experience frictions that you've identified.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. And you just, I love how you just kind of dropped in this little big announcement like it was nothing a second ago.
Yes.
Luminoso.
You just did it, smart way.
You just kind of dropped it in there like, hey, by the way, we just bought this.
By the way, yeah.
Let's take a minute. I mean, we've been touching on insight here and what is insight. We've been talking about quantitative metrics and qualitative information. We've been talking about how these blend together. I would love to have you just expand for a minute, just a little deeper than what you did a minute ago, about what was the reason behind or the dream behind the Luminoso deal. You could have probably built something, you could have probably explored something, you probably could have ignored that part of the data, but you chose not to.
Definitely. I would tell you it's pretty simple. We see the next evolution of journey management as experience orchestration.
Let's talk about that.
And experience orchestration is the context of the acquisition of Luminoso. It's not the journey management that drove me to do this. It's the experience orchestration dream that I have for a couple of years already. I'm with this vision of building one platform that will consolidate journey insights, journey orchestration, and journey design together. And that will act as a decision-making engine that will then drive action in the engagement layer with the customer in the touch points. This is the vision. And then see this as a continuous improvement cycle. Now, I see Luminoso as a very important part from a couple of reasons. There's a lot of hype around, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, everyone is using the same engines. Whether you go to all the competitors of Cemantica, they're all using the public engines that are available out there. So what is the difference between one and the other? If you're using the same engine, they will provide you the same answers. So I think there's no differentiation when everyone is using the same thing. The second thing is that you can't prevent hallucination in these engines that everyone is using. You are very much based on public data, and whatever is out there, that's the answers you're going to get. Yeah. And everyone has experiences with AI hallucinations and LLMs, inventing stuff that doesn't exist.
But it sounds compelling.
It sounds compelling. It sounds great. It's just not true. Do you really want to take decisions based on data that's just publicly available out there? And the second thing, think about it. As we go on, there's more and more garbage out there. There's corrupted data that is being created in an exponential way. Lots of AI is just creating stuff out there. It resides in many, many public data, available database that they are exploring. The Luminoso has its own engine of AI using RAG, the company's data, and is preventing a very high rate of hallucination prevented by that way. This is a proprietary mechanism that has been invested a lot of thought into it, that is producing quality analytics and deep analytics, not only what the customer said, but what the customer meant to say. And the meant to say, what's behind the words, is not something the public engines are really doing today. It just looks good, it sounds good, it's just not true. So that's what attracted me to buy the Luminoso. It fits perfectly into the Journey Insights Hub in this architecture of journey value management. At the end of the day, the vision of experience orchestration is to generate value. It's about value generation. Generate value to the business, generate value to the customer. The thing is that they're not disjointed. They need to happen in the same time. If you're generating value to the customer, it has to generate value to your business. If it doesn't, don't do it. You're not in a mission to improve customer experience, You're in a mission to improve customer experience because it's going to bring business results. Yeah. And if it only brings business results, but it's bad for customer experience, don't do it as well, because you're gaining short-term revenues for a long-term problem of loyalty.
Interesting. I used to have a boss who was one of these really world-class guys in CX. His name was Lior Arusi. And Lior used to talk a lot about, he used to have a saying, greed through love. As long as what you're improving enables you to show more love, you deserve to get paid more, have longer lasting relationships. You deserve to have more loyal customers who will refer you to others. All the things that allow you to qualify as being greedy. You should feel good about getting more by doing this well. And that's really, you can't do it for the sake of being benevolent or being generous. You got to do it because you want more returns. You want more people to give you more money. And if you don't do that, you're wasting your time. And I think there's a lot of truth to what Lior used to talk a lot about with that. So I give him great respect for talking like that. Jason, I'm dying to hear. I mean, you've been quiet down there, and I want to hear what your thoughts are about this whole thing. I mean, obviously, Eytan's painting a very broad and exciting new picture about this experience orchestration, and you on the client side, on the corporate side, surely have some opinions about this vision that he's laying out. What's your take on this orchestration next phase of the mission?
Yeah, you bring up, I hadn't heard that quote from Lior before, but I agree. In the credit union space, profit is often seen as a dirty word.
But you're not for profit.
But let's face it, every business, every organization needs to make money, as I often say, to keep the people that are my teammates employed so they can put food on the table and also achieve their dreams.
Sure.
We can do that mutually, with our customers, with our members. And so when I think about this, this idea of orchestration, if we go back to this thought of what are those data points that really matter, Eytan did a fantastic job, covering why data is important in the journey. And what I would say from an orchestration standpoint to complement that is not all data that is possible within a journey matters to the journey as well. Yep. So if we think of this thought of and I have off to my right on the bookshelf Dan Heath's book, Reset, which talks heavily about leverage points. And so when you've identified within the journey what those key specific leverage points are that actually matter and drive change, that's the area where I think from an orchestration standpoint, connecting data is most essential and most key. But what is that data that you actually look at and connect, or how do you look at it and connect? Well, think of lean principles in manufacturing. That can be done in any environment with a repeatable process. And this is not my wheelhouse because I'm not the data guy, but getting business analysts who can come in and deconstruct what a normal process looks like. And when I think of something like, say you're doing an e-com shopping experience on this website, and your team has identified that maybe customers are spending a certain amount of time on a page or looking at a certain number of pages before they ultimately make a decision. And there's always going to be a certain percentage of those that abandon, pretty high percentage. But let's say it's time on page where the customer is trying to figure out the details about this product that they're buying. Let's just say it's a technical sports coat for somebody that's into mountaineering. Well, they're looking at these different coats and they're trying to figure out what is it? What are the features of this coat? Well, there's a certain amount of time on page that maybe someone is spending to figure that out. Well, what if your percentage of customers, or a large percentage of customers, spending an outsized amount of time on that page?
Yeah.
That's a journey point where you need that data connected. And where lean comes into this is you can kind of deconstruct and go, what is the control variable where too much time on page for too many people is a problem? Too little time on page is also a problem because maybe they're just skipping right past things, or we have a breakdown in the page.
Yep.
So it's kind of stepping back and going, where are the points that convert person into a cart, into a sale? And in this example, maybe it's that time on page where they're really trying to find out those details. Now that's a data point that you track, you control, and you build your experience kind of orchestrated around optimization at that key point in the journey. And you keep revisiting that over time with new experiences. And as you change your product mix with that lens in mind, so you're not just running haphazard, but you're letting data guide how you make changes and react to the business.
Sure.
That was clear. I know that I kind of meandered a little bit.
No, it made sense. It made complete sense to me. Eytan, question for you. While we're thinking about what Jason's talking about there, you again took this big idea a second ago, like you slipped in the Luminoso mention a few minutes ago. You slipped in this journey value management idea a few minutes ago too. Like it was just a subtle little drop.
Yeah.
And I think it requires a little bit of more understanding. Can we take a minute, just talk about the vision for Jump? What is value management? How does it fit into the bigger framework? And at what point is this something that you and your team are ready to deliver on?
Yeah, sure. The journey value management, the reason we put value between journey and management, we just added one word, but it's the word that changes everything, right? It's the focus on value.
Yes.
And I see two value loops. In this architecture of the journey value management platform, there are two value loops. The first value loop is concentrated on the journey design decision making. This is where you design the experiences and you plan for the longer term projects, the initiative that are going to solidify your experience foundation. The second value loop is everything related to journey orchestration. This is handling the things we need here and now for tailoring the experiences to the individual customer. When you're designing customer journey, you're not designing to Mark Mendel or to Jason or to Eytan. You're designing experiences to a persona, which is a segment. It's not a real person. The journey orchestration module is designing experiences for the individual customer, tailoring one guy, one person, one lady, doesn't matter, one individual customer or consumer that currently I need to personalize their experiences on the website, on the app, in the phone, email, whatever, okay, whichever channel. This is the second value loop. So there are two value loops that need to work in parallel in the journey value management platform in order to create change to customers, because customers need both long-term change and short-term change. They need short-term change here and now, but they also need that the company will plan the experience foundation to be solid also moving forward. I give you an example. The journey design can produce one of the insights or the opportunities that the journey design process can produce is that we need to upgrade our CRM system. Upgrading a CRM system isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's probably a project of 1 or 2 years time, but you still need to do it. You can say, no, I'm only doing orchestration here and now. Everything my customer need now, I'm going to do. But planning only for now doesn't secure the future. So that's the value loop of journey design is very important because it's working for the longer term, while the journey orchestration is working for everything I need now, which the journey design doesn't cover because it's looking on the longer term. This is the essence of the journey value management platform and the continuous optimization cycle.
Very cool. Guys, I know we're going to be coming up on the hour in just a few minutes, so I'd love to wrap up with just a couple of questions. I want to frame them, though, as kind of like my lightning round questions, where we just come back with, give me a kind of quick top of mind thoughts, because I think they're important that we talk about them for just a minute. And I would be completely remiss, and I know people listening in would be angry with me if I didn't ask the bigger question around, well, Eytan, you talked about it a few minutes ago relative to Luminoso. Let's talk about AI broadly, because certainly AI is on everybody's mind right now. The role of AI, misuses of AI, real uses of AI. Where is AI today in this journey management and experience orchestration framework or idea? Where does AI, what role does AI play? Does it replace the front line? Does it augment the front line? Is it an analytical horsepower system? Is it an enabler? Tell me where you see that sitting. And then Jason, I'm going to want your thoughts as well about that if you can.
I would say AI, first of all, is essential today. You can't ignore it and say it doesn't exist, doesn't matter. Or let's continue to work in the traditional way, because you're missing on a train which can bring value, and we are all getting value from using artificial intelligence tools today. So I definitely think this is important. I see AI playing a role everywhere, actually, both in the decision making, in the qualification of the insights, in the analytics of the data, in the actions in the channels, the chatbot, the agents that are doing actions. So it's everywhere. This trend is just going to increase. It's not going to decrease. It's going to increase. So Today, it's an enabler, it's an analytical tool, it's everything you've said at once. It's just playing different roles across the architecture of the journey value management, and its role is going to increase over time. If you ask me what is my vision that this will become a digital employee. The CX manager will become a digital CX manager that is able to digest data and take decisions based on this data, collect that feedback that you need, digest it, and take decisions. Just get me the result. The business will only give the digital worker, will give what is my strategy and what do I want to achieve as a business. And that's it. And then the AI agent, which will evolve to become a digital employee, I think this is what's going to happen.
That's cool. Anything that you see differently or you want to add, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing here from from my seat is I am less worried about AI replacing people's jobs, than most. I think it changes components of jobs, and let's say this for frontline folks. I'm really interested in what AI can do for any business that has, say, a contact center or frontline teams to help those agents and those employees that are helping customers directly surface more information more accurately, more quickly, and take care of some of the low-level issues, while unlocking the ability for the organization to upskill those employees in areas that I would refer to more as wisdom components of their role, so that you can train people to go really deep with your customers in relational businesses like mine to do more. AI can then act as a complement to free up time for that better and deeper conversation to happen. That then, as Eckert would say, who we all know, that's leading to progress in our customers' lives in the next step of life progress. We can leverage that wisdom in AI to help make that happen.
So the common thread here between both of you guys is, in the near term, AI plays the role of sort of employee assistant, and in the future becomes the digital employee. For lack of a better way of saying it. Interesting.
Yeah,
guys,
I don't think AI becomes a digital employee in my world, honestly.
No. Maybe not yours, but how about your frontline teams? At some point, could we unlock AI to start taking kind of tier 1, level 1 phone conversations with members, and just do triage?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very low level things. What's my balance? What was that type of thing? Has this transaction posted? That's all stuff that's not emotionally tied, but the moment that it comes in that I'm struggling to pay my bills. I don't know how to manage my account. Where did this money go? Was there fraud on my account? Those are things that inherently are such a deeply emotional human need.
Yeah. Yes,
true. We can't rely on AI for.
Not today.
You can't fake it. It doesn't work when you try.
You can't fake it. That's true. I agree with you. The machine cannot replace the human, the emotional capabilities we have. Machines don't have it today. We don't know how it's going to evolve, but today this is true.
So, gentlemen, I know we're right at the hour. I could sit and talk with you guys for 3 more hours, but I think people get mad at me. So I think what we do is we'll wrap this up here. But I want to invite people listening in to treat this like the beginning of a conversation more so than the end. And reach out to these guys. Reach out to Jason. Reach out to Eytan. Have a conversation. These guys are good guys, and they're accessible, and they want to talk shop with you about all this stuff and learn about your business and have you learn about theirs. Jason, we'll start with you. If somebody wants to reach out to chat more about this with you, what's the best way to track you down? Is it email? Is it LinkedIn? Is it something different? What's the best channel?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest, and that is Jason, Jason, Goodin, Goodin.
Easy enough.
LinkedIn is fine, no problem. And anyway, there's no one with my name. So if you type my name, you will only find one result.
You're one of a kind.
I'm one of a kind, yes.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for hanging out with both of you, hanging out with my friends and me here today. It's been good to talk with you about this, and I hope that for those of you folks who gave us the hour together, begin to learn about some new and exciting things. May have learned about Cemantica for the first time or Everwise for the first time, and the missions that these guys are on. They're doing some really important work, and I'm thrilled to call these guys, friends of mine. They're part of my network. I'm doing some work for Eytan's company at this point, going forward for the next few months to help out. I'm a big believer in both of these guys, and I really want you guys to get to know them better. So thank you for hanging out here with the three of us today. And guys, just bottom line as we wrap this up, the work we're talking about here is not a quick fix. It's not a sprint. It's a long run to get it right. Have patience, but understand this is about outcomes. And if you're not working toward outcomes, we're not going to succeed. So folks, thank you for listening to this conversation. And Eytan and Jason, thank you for hanging out with everybody here. Stay well, my friends, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.